started out by painting a horizon line which is above halfway. It's kind of like almost a third, and I've drawn a triangle in the middle of that to show the sort of sky. It's kind of like the negative space, so I'm sort of showing the outline of the buildings as well, giving a little bit of detail. I'm using a small flat brush and a little bit of burnt umber acrylic paint. I'm kind of using the rules of linear perspective. It's really useful, especially if you're doing a street scene. I'm really simplifying it though. And to try to make it look 3D, I'm going to use linear perspective, 1 point perspective. So the first thing you'll need to do is have a horizon line, and I'm going to have the vanishing point around just about the bottom of the sky there. As you can see, I'm putting in some vertical lines here for the buildings, and as I get nearer to the triangle in the middle, the gaps between those vertical lines get smaller, and as you can see, those vertical lines get longer as they come towards me. And I'm using parallel lines now. It's the sort of mapping out the street, and it's like a triangle, and it's going to appear to meet on the horizon. So my vertical lines from the buildings will join that, and as you can see here, it creates the look of a bit of depth. It's a great thing to use, especially if you're starting out in drawing. And what I'm doing now is I'm using my flat brush, and I'm using pale colour. It's a bit of cobalt blue, a touch of burnt umber and some white, and I'm just blocking in sort of pale colours in the distance, and as I come into the foreground, I'll use stronger tonal values, more details and darks. And this is called atmospheric perspective or aerial perspective, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. That also helps you to create depth in a painting. So basically this is a 2D surface I'm working in, and I'm using these artistic tools to create the illusion of a 3D space. I've actually painted slightly warmer colour on the right hand side there, with a little bit more burnt umber and some white there, and I've got a little bit of a stronger shadow colour on the left. But basically just sort of put in some palish greyish colours there for your buildings, just block them in. I'm just sort of making them more stripy, and obviously they're getting larger as they come towards the foreground, but I'm not really defining any buildings at the moment, so just have fun with this, putting these colours on. They're just coming down to meet that parallel line, and I'm just blending as well with my fingertips any of the marks there, but it's very sort of roughly painted in here. I've used a little bit of processed cyan with a little bit of the burnt umber, just different blues here to create some greys, even a touch of black as well. Just be careful using black on its own. It can be quite a flat colour, but it's quite nice adding to other colours to create darks. But you can see there's a very large triangle here for the pavement, and I'm just blending that up into the buildings. So there's no definition, no defining here. So don't worry about the detail, just block everything in. And I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush, but use quite a largish brush so you can cover this large area. As you can see, I'm just blending this building in the distance as well, and I'm actually now just putting a little bit of paler tones in there. I felt it was a little bit dark for the distance there. The painting has dried, and I've mixed up some cobalt blue, a touch of pink and some white. I'm still using my flat brush. And this is a cool colour. Cool colours recede, so they look like they're further away. Warmer colours come forward. So I am actually painting these cooler tones, and it's part of the aerial atmospheric perspective techniques. I'm also using smaller sizes as well, so that recedes. Larger objects come forward. Hope this is making sense. All these things can help create depth in your painting. Don't be tempted to go to a smaller brush and try to draw things in. You can block things in. You can half close your eyes. So I'm simplifying this street scene. It'll still have depth, but as you can see here, I'm just printing with my brush, with the tip of my brush, to create the edges of buildings and the look maybe of some windows. But it's more of an sort of an impressionistic style. maybe even a little bit semi-abstract. And I love working this way. It's so much fun. Rather than copying the photograph, you're interpreting it and you're using it as a reference. So these are kind of pale bluish colours. I've used white, touch of blue, and you can just vary that third colour. It could be a little touch of black, a touch of green, pink, red, brown, just to kind of vary those tonal values here. I'm making slightly stronger tones as I'm coming sort of in the middle ground, and as you see, if I get to the foreground, I'll make even stronger tonal values, bigger marks, more contrast as well of light and darks. I'm actually using a plastic palette knife. You could actually use kind of a birthday card, an old one, and you can recycle it and just use the edge of that as well. It's stiff enough to actually create these lines, and I'm actually just painting some light paint on there, and it's a really nice way of painting straight lines. Straight lines can be incredibly difficult to paint with a brush, but printing them with a palette knife or a card is so much easier. So I'm just painting now a little bit of darker tonal values, more detail, bigger marks in the foreground here, and that creates the depth there. And it's that kind of like arches, but as you can see there, I've not sort of worried about it. I'm just sort of using my brush to keep it really simple with the marks, and I'm just sort of drawing in the road again, because obviously I painted over it here with some darker marks that appear to meet on the horizon. I sort of curved it as well, so it looks like the street is going round as well. You can see the painting sort of coming together now. I'm using lots of darks and lights on the actual road because obviously it's been raining, or it's may have stopped because I think some people have taken their umbrellas down, but the pavement's very wet. It's almost like, you know, sort of reflections that you'd have on a river. So I'm using that here, lots of darks and lights. The darks is a little bit of black with a bit of the cyan or Prussian blue, a bit of cobalt blue and some white, and the lighter colour is some blue and white mixed up together. And you can blend that with your brush and keep it quite abstract. Remember, smaller marks in the distance. Now I've swapped to a smaller brush and I'm using just black acrylic paint, and I've painted kind of like a half a circle. So the top bit's quite round, but just at the bottom bit you can sort of vary the marks, so it looks like the sort of the bottom of the umbrella there. And with the person, very small head, arch window for the body, the jacket, the coat area, and just 2 vertical lines for the legs, keeping it really, really simple. And you can sort of have, with the arch window for the coat, just have maybe an elbow sticking out halfway. It just creates the illusion of a person. The thing to look out for is try to have everyone's heads or umbrellas around the horizon area. So these people I'm drawing here, the heads are about the same level, but they get smaller in scale and their legs are a lot higher up. And this way it creates the illusion of them walking into the distance. I'm making some darker marks here on the left, using some burnt umber, which is a warmer colour, and just using some vertical marks, working wet on dry. So remember, small head, arched window, 2 sort of vertical lines for the legs, one shorter than the other. You can then put a little bit of reflection underneath as well, and then just have a little elbow sticking out and vary the colours. So I'm using sort of darkish blues and browns, and as you can see how there we are, I'm painting some reflection underneath with a few squiggly lines. Remember to paint the people in the distance smaller, so they gradually get smaller and smaller, and it's a really good way of creating depth in your painting. I've actually swapped to a smaller brush to make smaller marks of people in the distance here. I've given them a few umbrellas as well. The other thing is the tonal value is lighter. They're not as dark. Darker tones come forward. So it really helps to create that illusion. And some of them are just little lines that I've painted for the people. And just remember to put a little bit of reflection as well underneath. So the painting has dried, and I'm using some cadmium reds with a small round brush, and I'm just putting a few little red lights here and there, and also giving that person there a scarf. So little bits of colour, not too much, just little colour accents here and there. It's fun to do, and it brings your painting to life. So I've swapped now to the yellow and the red, and I'm just painting this wet on dry, just here and there where I can see it in the photograph as well. And I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow as well to really create that yellow light just in the distance there. And it sort of brings the painting to life just by putting these little colour accents. You've almost got to sort of hold back a bit. You can get a bit carried away, or I know I can. So I'm painting the left hand side here. There's lots of yellow light here, and because it's in the foreground, it's a lovely warm colour. It brings it forward and it creates this illusion of depth. So I'm painting bigger marks, warmer colours, light against dark. So I'm using all these tools to create depth, and I'm putting a little bit of this light now reflected on the wet pavement as well. And again, the marks get smaller as they go into the distance. So I've added some white to my yellow just to make the light really bright in the distance. It's to draw your eye, and the person in the middle of this painting is the focal point. I'm just painting some light white colours just on the road here for some reflections as well, and blending it with my fingertips. I decided the person in the middle of the street here needed a red umbrella to bring them forward, to make them the focal point. And it's sort of, I'm using cadmium red and I'm working wet on dry with a small little flat brush here. And as you can see, it really draws that person out, makes the painting look more interesting as well. I've added a little bit of yellow to that red as well for the top part of the umbrella, so the light coming from above if there's much of it, and just sort of a stronger red at the bottom of the umbrella there as well. Great thing about acrylic painting is that you can paint over the top if you go wrong, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm sort of tidying up this umbrella and the person. They were a little bit wide, so I've just actually used some lighter grey paint there just to sort of tidy up. I'm also painting a little bit of red reflection on the road here to sort of show the reflection of the umbrella there. So it really is telling a story, it's creating interest, it's got a warm colour right in the foreground there, reflecting that umbrella. I'm just using a little bit of yellow right on top of the umbrella there just to create a little bit more light, and also to bring out the focal point there. Mixing up a little bit of green here, and I'm just tidying this person up on the right. I've given him a face as well, and this one here on the left. So some people appear to be walking in my direction and not away to the distance there. I'm also painting a very sort of light grey. You can use a bit of black and white and a touch of blue. And for the people, the reflection, it just sort of really, even if you can't see it sometimes, it's quite nice to use this artistic tool. It creates depth in the pavement there and interest. I felt there wasn't enough detail in the distance, which is no bad thing, just looking at it critically now. So I'm putting a few marks for windows in the distance there, using my small flat brush with a mixture of black, white and blue. I've also decided to spatter some yellow to create the look of lots and lots of lights, small lights in the distance, giving that person with the red umbrella a reason to walk into the distance. It just creates that bit of interest when you're composing sort of like a street scene. It's an easy way of creating lots of detail as well. And I'm just using my palette knife to put in these marks here at the top. You can just about see them in the photograph there. Again, it creates interest. Just make sure the spaces at the top are wider, and as they go towards the distance they get thinner but also disappear. So I think I'll leave my painting there for now. This is the finished painting. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you learnt something about linear perspective, but also aerial perspective. So creating depth in your painting. If you have any questions about this tutorial, please put them in the comments section below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. And remember, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube Acrylic channel, where you will get updates of my latest tutorials. Thank you again for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.